Do you need to deal with your anger in personal, intimate relationships because it's really costing your relationships? Stay tuned, because in this video, I'm going to be giving you the solution. Hi, this is Simon Lovell, bringing you growth in under 10 minutes. And in this video today, we're going to be talking about anger in relationships, intimate relationships. And I am going to give you my perspective to help you move through that into a whole new life. As always, hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell to make sure that you get updates. Now, I want to take you back to a relationship that I was in, a few years ago, and I can remember the rage, I can remember the frustration, I can remember raising my voice and, just shutting that other person down to the point where after everything had subsided, this is what I was saying to myself. I was saying, this is not you. This is bringing out the worst in me. And I knew that I had to go deeper. Right? I had to go deeper within myself and heal. And one of the key principles I talk about within Modern Spiritual Man and the people that I coach and work with, business owners, people who want to just improve their lives, is that self-awareness is the key to everything, right? As we become more self-aware, as we raise our consciousness, the old parts of us fall away. And so I want to remind you, what are the keys to self-awareness? Number one, information and knowledge, the things that we learn because we get these aha moments. You can learn, read, watch videos, all of that. Number two, going inward. And it's about discipline, sharpening our mind and really understanding ourselves so we can heal, right? Bring up things that have been suppressed for so long. I wrote a book called The Black Ball, which was about suppression of, things that I had hid from my past because I was shameful and embarrassed about that. And the third is around conversation, dialogue, when we're willing to be really brutally honest and then get honest feedback to the things that we can't see, and that brings awareness so that suddenly things start to dissolve. Sometimes different healing modalities, they're important, and so it's sometimes a collective of multiple things. But what I notice in my own shifts and my own level of consciousness and helping other people, it's a combination of these things, but also the key of self-awareness. Now, what's incredibly important when it comes to anger is the principle of something that I developed and talk about, which is called the line. Okay, so when it comes to self-awareness, we have the pre-line and the post-line. So what I mean by that is, for example, maybe you take an action, like you're angry and your body gets taken over, and then maybe you apologize straight away afterwards, or maybe that's in a week's time, or whatever the sequence is for you, because you have a sequence of action. Okay, so as we become more self-aware, what happens is that this starts to go from post-line to pre-line, right? So suddenly we're in the moment when we say something and then we're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry because we took that action. So when we do the work, right, and we have this awareness about maybe a black ball or something that's not been healed, or the self-reflection that we've done, and we've had someone bring our awareness to the fact that we're not able to communicate and we need to clear that out. Like, there's so many different things that can affect someone getting angry to the point where they shut someone down. By the way, when it comes to intimate relationships, what shuts typically a male down is tone of voice, and what shuts a female down is how loud, right? So it's about shouting and raising their voice. That shuts someone else down and then they don't feel safe. So we want to get to the pre-line so that when we're in that moment where it's going to happen, we have the awareness that comes up so we don't take that action. Okay? So how do we get to the pre-line versus the post-line where we've already taken the action? Right? Well, that comes from, once again, the awareness of the things that we can't see. It could be that there's an event, a life event that's happened because something's triggering you from the past, right? It could be communication, and so learning to consciously communicate because there's a build-up, right? Often we're angry because stuff has bubbled beneath the surface that we've not addressed because maybe we're not able to communicate. and we find it hard to communicate. And so there has to be, especially with an intimate relationship, there has to be two people that there are agreements around dialogue. So one concept that I have in my intimate relationship is around the concept of real-time conversation. And this is incredibly powerful because what it does is it clears out energy. Because remember, anger is just energy. And so when you have the concept of real-time conversation, when things are constantly being brought up and brought up and brought up, they don't have the space to brew up into anger. But that takes education on the part of not just one person, but also two people together. I was just in a conversation with a couple last week, and there was so much going on. There was, raising, or it was actually physical, hitting of one person. There was threats by the other person, and this was, of course, two people's egos coming into play because they didn't feel safe, and there were multiple triggers going on in that relationship. And so there had to be multiple conversations, not just about one thing, but from multiple different angles to reframe, to deconstruct, to educate, to bring awareness to things that, honestly, when you've got two people in a relationship and who have the best interests for each other, but they're just being triggered left, right, and center, there's also a collective conversation that needs to happen around conscious communication. I'm in the space right now in my relationships and also with my partner where just there is no raising a voice and just that level. Why? Because there's a consciousness in the relationship. There's a different level of consciousness. And so we need to recognize that we're at a certain level of consciousness. And as we raise our consciousness, and that's where the work is, right, in raising our own consciousness and self-awareness, once that raises, there's a different standard, right? There's a different standard that we have in a relationship where that just doesn't exist. Why? Because it's a new way of being, because we fully understand ourselves. And if you're in a position right now where there's lots of anger, there's lots of frustration, when you understand yourself more deeply, which you will, massive shifts start to happen. If you're interested and if this is a challenge for you and something that you want to move through, certainly head to modernspiritualman.com and go to the mentorship section and you can apply for a call, because that can be extremely powerful just from finding out if there's a black ball, if there's something that needs to be resolved through. Sometimes it's an instant shift, sometimes it takes a bit more time. Typically within 4 weeks or so, there can be some monumental shifts in my experience of working with couples and men in particular. And I can tell you now that the freedom, not just with your partner, but the freedom from yourself is so important because it also impacts other areas of your life. It's not just intimate relationships. I can be sure of that. It also impacts business. It also impacts career. It also impacts family. And most of all, it impacts your well-being. And I want you to be happy, to be fulfilled, and for that not to exist. But I need you to understand that it won't exist if you're committed. And that's the key. Know that it will shift, but you have to have the commitment. Because when I went through all my stuff and I had all the debt and all the anger and the frustration and the addictions, there was just a commitment for me that I'm going to do whatever it takes. It will clear. You'll be fine. Just make sure that you're committed. And maybe it's not the right time, or maybe it is. This is Simon Lovell, bringing you growth to support you in your journey. Hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell, and I'll see you in another video. Take it easy.